What's up, y'all, and welcome to another episode of Worldly Church Girl. It's your girl, your host, Lillian Harshaw. On today's show, I have the Amazon bestseller. She is a chiropractor. She is a functional medicine practitioner. She is a life coach, and so much more. She is Dr. Patricia Boulogne, aka Dr. Pat. Amazon bestsellers, lifestyle coach, chiropractor, speaker, more than 30 years teaching people how to live longer and better just by improving their habits, health, and their happiness. What is lifestyle medicine?
So lifestyle medicine was coined, it's an emerging branch. So the two emerging branches in medicine are functional medicine and lifestyle medicine. So lifestyle medicine takes a look at the whole person. It's very similar to functional medicine, but it takes a look at the whole person, and it looks at how things can, how somebody can adapt their lifestyle using this plan first. So diet, then you look at doing exercise, then you would do target supplementation, and then you would do medications if the other top three didn't work. And, maybe like other things like, chiropractic, acupuncture, things like that. So lifestyle medicine is a emerging medicine, and a lot of people practice it now because they have found that they've been able to, make significant lifestyle changes and help people make those changes in their life so that they have better habits, health, and happiness.
So what made you choose this practice?
As a chiropractor, you do it automatically. In the National Institute of Health, coined it as a branch, at one point in time. And then I also have certification as a lifestyle medicine coach under the auspices of First Line Therapy, which is a program I did with a place out in California. And it just came naturally to me. I had a really great mentor when I was in chiropractic school that I never missed his class. If I was sick, I would still be there. He was so great because he interests me so deeply into like how food could be medicine. And I had these really interesting health breakthroughs myself. When I used to get colds and laryngitis, I'd get them, being in Michigan in that ice cold weather that I grew up in. I would have, laryngitis. I'd have a cold, go to laryngitis, and I couldn't talk. It was a 3-week program. When I started getting adjusted in chiropractic school and changing some of my food choices, I didn't have a cold anymore. I didn't get laryngitis, and, I expressed more health. And, I was more alert. I had, my grade point, which I was pretty decent to begin with, ended up in the mid to high 3s.
Wow.
And so it was just like, it was a, mind-blowing thing going to chiropractic school for me. And there was all these pieces of the puzzle fit together, so he was my first person that made that, open Pandora's box. And then, when I graduated, I went like, well, now what are you supposed to do with all this information? And the first seminar I went to as a licensed doctor, I met this guy, doctor, his name was Dr. Frank, and it was like opening Pandora's box again. I had such bad allergies to very specific things, and he adjusted me. I changed a couple habits, and I have never had those experiences ever again.
I'm actually going to an ENT doctor right now, trying to figure out what's going on with my own allergies.
We should take a look at that, because there's little things that people, do that are habits that they picked up, that they've done all the time. And I've never met anybody with allergy problems that they don't have some level of a gut problem with digestion and that type of thing.
Yep, I have that too. Found out about the gut issue before I found out about the allergy issues, because I've always had allergies. As far as I knew, I just have allergies. Allergy season comes, I just expect, to suffer. So it's no big deal. So then when the stomach started acting up, I was more concerned about that than I was my allergies.
Well, a lot of times people try to treat the symptom of the allergy. So what happens in Western medicine treats that they don't treat the root cause, they treat the symptom. And so you keep on watering down the symptom until it can no longer be watered down. And so when you do that, you're constantly looking for the next, the next wonder thing, like, oh, I can take this alternative medication for blah, 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 blah. And now I've got this problem back again. I've got to change it to something else. Number one, it's costly in time. It's also costly in, out of your pocketbook too. So testing and going to the root of a cause is more efficient, and one of the ways that I do that is I have a health questionnaire, a health snapshot that is in my book that I recently wrote that you mentioned. And also, I have, when I'm coaching one-on-one, I have a shortened version of just those questions. But the book is important because it sets the stage so you understand, your why you're there, and then your how and the what are in the book. A lot of people talk about doing, I've got to do a detox, or I'm going to do a fast. And it isn't always a good thing to do, depending upon the person and what their health profile is. So if somebody has, a high gut score, for instance, in my full system survey, my whole big questionnaire, then, you got to fix the gut first before you can do a detoxification. And the liver never detoxifies. That's what people have a misconception of. They go, I'm going to do a liver detox. And the liver you don't detox the liver. The liver has the function of detox. It doesn't have that function of, doing it. You just don't detox it. And what happens is if the liver gets so overwhelmed, what it does is it's supposed to take those toxins and put them back into your intestinal tract. And then you either pee them out or you poop them out. And
Right.
if they can't do that because those toxins keep on getting reabsorbed, then it goes back to the liver. So when the liver gets overwhelmed with that job, then it starts to store those toxins in fat, bone, brain, and so if it's putting them in those places, and you're getting toxins that are really deep. And the other thing, we have such a problem in this country with heavy metals. Heavy metals go right through the gut lining. It's only one layer. And if the gut lining gets damaged, then sometimes you have some proteins that are going through, or some foods that are going through the gut too soon, which is setting you up to have later on have more of an autoimmune response to certain foods. So it's really important to, when you're looking at like if I was looking at you, it's like, let's find out what's happening in all your organ systems. And then let's see for sure what's going on with your gut. Because if you change your gut and the health of your gut, you change your life. It's like, you're so much more healthier. You sleep better, you eat better, you interact better, you have better relationships, you have more of a opportunity to, better relationships with your kids, your family, your husband, the whole thing, because you're just not tired, you're not overwhelmed, and everything's functioning the way it's supposed to. So I use the analogy of like a Swiss watch, because the Swiss watch I use as an analogy for the body. So the brain controls and coordinates all functions, and so each organ system is like a part of the Swiss watch. So when one part falters, it affects another part. So when people do liver function tests, one test for the liver and the detoxification portion of it, and another test is related back to the heart. So they're all of the organ systems will affect another organ system. And that's why when, I look at the questionnaire I have, and somebody has a high immune score, but they have a really low gut score, I'm always saying, you must have been in a hurry when you did this quiz. Because there's no way I know anybody who has a high immune score, which is chapter 7, that has a low, functioning, like they have low scores, which make it a low priority, or your strongest health link. That just doesn't exist. And
Right.
so, it's just like, and it's helping people see that pieces of the puzzle so that they can learn to better advocate for themselves and be better educated about their health so they can make better decisions.
I wish I would have talked to you a few weeks ago because I literally bought probably, I don't know how many detox teas just because I thought, well, maybe I just need to get a good flushed out. I have irritable bowel syndrome.
Hmm.
So I know what the problem is, and I don't have a gallbladder. So I know my intestines are just fighting and my liver's fighting, everybody's fighting with each other.
But I bet you didn't feel good when you did those.
No, not really. Well, especially this last batch that I just got, I'm like, it made me feel weird. I was like, I didn't understand why because it was natural. I said, well, maybe that's just my body resisting it.
That happens to a lot of people when they go and they do detoxes on their own, because ideally, the way to do a detox is not to make your liver purge, you know, but is to help get toxins out in a natural way. So like the liver does its job better. So in order for the liver to do its job better, you've got to have a gut that's in good shape.
There's a term that you use called the Grim Reaper syndrome. I laughed at that for a couple reasons, mainly because my mother, God rest her soul, she just passed away this
Oh,
year.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. We used to call her Grim Reaper because, because it didn't matter what you had, it was going to turn to death. If you
Uh-huh.
said, "Oh, my pinky toes messed up," oh, you can get gangrene in your foot. They have to amputate your foot. It'll go up your leg and it'll hit your heart, and you will die.
God bless her.
Loved her, so we just start calling her Grim Reapers. Like, don't tell Mama that something's wrong with you, because then you're gonna die.
She'll relate it to something. It reminds me of that, what was that, a Greek wedding or something like that, My Fat Greek Wedding or
Yes,
whatever,
the Windex.
with the Windex
Yes.
thing, right? So there's some truth perhaps in Windex. Windex has a lot of chemicals in it, that you don't ever want to like get, because,
Apply to
and,
your pimple. Yeah.
but you're probably wondering, what I call Grim Reaper syndrome are syndromes that are things that people don't pay attention to. So it's just like floaters in the eye. Like they tell you, oh, that's just a normal part of aging. Well, I don't buy that, because in Chinese medicine, floaters in your eye are a sign of stagnation. And the organ that stagnates the most is the liver. So, and those floaters can be clear and they could be dark. So in Chinese medicine, the clear ones relate to the liver and the dark colored ones relate back to the kidneys, because the eyes are a window to the soul, but they're also a window to kidney and liver function in Chinese medicine per se, like in a broad sense.
Okay.
It's just like use it as an indicator. So like there's like other things like, people who I used to ask people like, so tell me about your poop, and they would say, it's fine. What color is it? I don't know. Just like,
yes, you do.
well, then you don't, then you don't know, like, and you'd ask questions about it because, you're looking for well-formed, brown, you're not looking for like goat stool type things, because those in Chinese medicine mean something, and they mean something in Western medicine too. So I ask some of those questions on my questionnaire also, because it's more detailed than any organ system review you've ever taken in any doctor's office. And it shows you the relationship to your pattern. So back to the Grim Reaper part of it, there's other symptoms like, it's just like being thirsty, or when you start having bloating in your gut, you ask your friend going, I'm just recently having a lot of bloating, blah, blah, blah. And they will say, oh, I had that when I was your age too, goes away. And then you realize like 2 or 3 years down the line, it never went away. So it's all those things when they start like, one thing by itself, like maybe truly for a short while is no big deal. But then, when something happens and it's perpetual, then all of a sudden you wake up and you're in crisis, and so it's so much more, costly. It's like a review that I love on my book. This woman wrote in and she said, you don't know you have a problem because you haven't been told you had a problem, or something like that. And then she relates it to a flat tire. I mean, we all know that we've had leaks in our tires and we go put air in it. We go put air because we don't have time to go to the guy at the tire store, and actually have them take it off and look at it.
Right.
And so we keep on putting a Band-Aid on it, putting the Band-Aid on it, putting the Band-Aid on it. And so one day the tire is going to blow out, and you're going to have to not only replace that tire, you're going to have to replace at least 2 of them, if not 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same, it's the same thing. And in Western medicine, because in Western medicine, they keep on telling you with all those Band-Aids that they give you, like, because she asked me, what can you do for chronic, fatigue? And I said, you didn't read the book. And because she emailed me. And I said, you didn't read all the book. You didn't read all the book. And then she goes, what can you do for, myofibralgia? And I said, you didn't read the book. And, then she come back to me. She goes, I finally finished the book. I hope you, she wrote me a personal message. She goes, thank you so much for forcing me to read this book, because it gave me such a huge different perspective of what's really going on with me. And it gave me the education so I knew exactly where to start my health journey. Because a lot of times you read like, oh, just do this if you can't sleep, take melatonin, and it's like, well, that's great. It might be a short-term fix, but you're watering down the syndrome or watering down the signs, So, and Western medicine really doesn't know how to diagnose you until you have the actual flat tire. Right. And then you're in crisis. So I'm just thinking, God, wouldn't it be great to have, a heads up? And like, on New Year's Day, like, how you like thinking, oh, what am I going to do for my health? And if you knew where to target your health on New Year's Day, then by Valentine's Day, you wouldn't be throwing it down the toilet,
Right.
Exactly. You would have more, you would be, it's very concentric, it's very funneled, it's very laser focused of like, where should I pay attention to? And then you can periodically go back and look at that same questionnaire. And kind of like, I'm kind of feeling weird lately, let me go in and see what's going on.
Right.
And then you can compare, if you're working on something specific, you can repeat that questionnaire 8 weeks later, or 12 weeks later, whatever is an appropriate time span, and you can see where you're doing better and if you're doing worse someplace, because sometimes when you fix one thing, whatever's going on under the surface sits off like kind of an inflammatory response in that area. And so you might have a little bit of a surge in where and then all those organ systems working together can tax your immune system.
We keep mentioning your book, but we haven't said the title of it yet. Why are you sick, fat, and tired? How did you come up with this title that's so in your face? Like, let's cut through all the BS. Why are you sick, fat, and tired?
Well, a lot of people always said to me, like, why am I like this? Or why do I have this? So that's where the why came from. And then in thought process, the sick, the fat, and the tired, people know when they're tired. And people know basically if they're fat. You can look in a mirror, your clothes don't fit you anymore, and so you can look at that. There's another way to see if you have internal fat, because you can be very skinny and have a high fat content internally. And then that would be determined by a body composition test. But you don't know if you're sick. And being sick takes a while. I'm not talking about, head in the toilet kind of sick. I'm talking more, it's just like, I just don't feel good. People use like, God, I just don't feel good. And 3 months later, you find out, that person who was telling you that you have cancer. Mm-hmm. And, just off the top of my head, I can minimally think in the last couple of years of 5 people that have said that to me. And 3 months later, they have cancer. And some of those 5 people are not here anymore.
Oh, sorry.
So, like knowing, like if you could, like look at the big picture, like a mind map and go like, this is where I'm at right now. And this is my red flags. Let's get rid of the red flags. Yeah. And anybody can change something in their habits, at least for a short period of time. And when they talk about in the definition of lifestyle medicine, targeted supplementation, they're not talking about supplementation that you would necessarily do for the rest of your life. Talking about targeted supplementation. So if you're working on an organ system that's out of kilter, you want to like fix the problem on a nutritional level there first, before do exercise and do other things like, meditation and, things like that. And meditation doesn't mean like you got to be like the guru thing with your fingers, like, touching your first 3 fingers touching and you're oming. Meditation can be other things. It can be prayer. It can be hugging a tree. It could be just taking a nice walk and kind of like saying, like the other day, I walked out of where I'm living, and there's these beautiful thyme plants that are in front of the house. And there's all these bees in them. I love bees. I want to be a beekeeper when I retire.
God.
And so I'm going like, oh, look at the bees are here, and I just went like, go have a good time, go pollinate, because we need more bees in our environment. And, so it could be other things like that. It could be listening to binaural beats. It could be, you can't sleep at night, it's just like what I do. My health hack for that is I look for, I put on binaural beats that I like to listen to, or I listen to an Abraham Hicks tape, or I listen to a book. And I'll just time it so it will go off in 30 minutes. And of course, the next day I have to go back and back it up to 30 minutes so I can listen to that part that I slept through. But just like, little things like that, that I help people with, like what works for them. Because what works for me doesn't work for necessarily everybody else. And it's just having, your bag of tools that you can really help people. Like, what is it? What would make you do that? Like what, tell me the kind of foods that you like, so I know how to help you make a better food plan. So that works for you. That's more simple. So that makes sense of that whole convoluted sometimes and complex and challenging part of what do I need to do? This is like overwhelming. So I make it simple, and I give a better way with some simple solutions that's quicker, faster. And so that you end up with, tangible results that are measurable, and you can see in your face, that for me is, and I do it very individualized. So what I would do with you might be something that I would do different than with your sister, or if I did it, with, somebody else that's a client, because it's just, I take really and value the whole person and who they are, and what works for them and what doesn't work for them. And then we work around those edges, and then when people start to see results there, a lot of times they're willing to do a lot more.
That's what I do like about what you do, is that you make it for each person. You don't say, okay, here's a plan and it's going to work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case. That's not real. That is not realistic.
That's how Western medicine treats, like hypertension, for instance, all the same way. They give you meds. Mm-hmm. They measure your blood pressure. That's my dog drinking out of a water bowl, in case you're hearing that.
Background. I thought you were cooking.
No. No, that's Jack. That's Jack drinking water.
Jack, that's okay. Jack,
bringing
a good time.
Bringing home the cows. What was I saying?
Oh, we were talking about Western medicine's reason for just putting everything in one bowl and dealing with hypertension and
that's how they're taught in school. They're taught in school, like, and here's a pill for hypertension, or this pill, and if that doesn't work, then this pill, or if you end up swelling up and having a bad reaction to that, here's this pill. So they feed you those pills to water down the symptoms. In 2004, in February 23rd, I think it was, in 2004, the Time magazine article had this, like, it said, inflammation, they finally found the link between chronic illness and disease, and they found that it was related to, these diseases like heart disease, stroke, and a couple other things. And then, and other, like obesity and in the such. And, and so that bit of inflammation is like, the question is like, where is my weakest link? Where is that? And for a lot of people, it is the gut, unfortunately. But the gut's one of the easiest organs to quote unquote fix.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. You're the expert. I just know mine has just been a booger. So, okay. I believe you.
It has the ability to, it repairs, if given the right, it's like when you're making, when you're making something to eat and you're reading a recipe, you've got to have all the pieces in the recipe or it doesn't work.
Sure.
So when you're going back and you're looking at this where you are. You got to go, here's where I'm at. This is where I want to go. And this is what I got going on. And what's the most important thing? Where's the tip of the iceberg? Let's get rid of the tip of the iceberg and work down the iceberg so that, whatever is submerged keeps on coming up and we can keep on dealing with what those issues are.
Now, why should we focus mainly on our health over the past 2 years?
A lot of people don't pay attention to their health. So when I ask that, I ask a couple questions. I always ask, tell me how your health has been in the last 2 years. And I've seen numerous looks on people's faces like, I don't know. They haven't been paying attention, and it's just like, or they go like, well, I guess it's been okay. And then when they fill out my questionnaire, they are going, I guess it hasn't been that good. And because they realize my questions are very intricate, they would know, like, going, I kind of have a couple other things going on that didn't just wrote off, when you're like doing Grim Reaper syndrome. That is a question that brings people back to reality and in present time, because then it makes them kind of run that filter, go, what else has been really happening in the last couple of years? What's been happening emotionally, physically, mentally, socially, spiritually? What has come unglued that needs to be glued?
Exactly.
Whether it's at home, whether it's work, and people can have traumas that they forget about. I mean, people forget that. I remember treating a person one time, and I said, people always then they lie to you too. It's like they go, I forgot to tell you something. When I was 12 years old, I fell off a horse and hit my head. Because then they first told you that they've never had an accident.
Right, right.
You're going, that's an accident. And so there's things that people tell you, and I also ask people when we're having just a conversation. Another question I ask them is, so tell me, do I remind you of your mother or your father? Because sometimes people will, when I'm asking questions, they kind of I can feel them slightly shutting down, like they're getting withdrawn. And I want to find out what's making them feel like that. And a lot of times it's one of their parents. If they say neither, or I just had a thought that just kind of messed with my head, what was the thought? Then we talk about the mindset, because mindset's really important. They don't realize how important positive mental attitude is and what their mindset is when they're going to go do something, to change their life. And they have people around who are supportive of that. That's so important, that sometimes is is the thing that, breaks the camel's back, is not having that support, or someone telling you that you're not that, that just isn't important, or why are you doing that? You just have to be strong enough. You never have to apologize. You don't have to explain to anybody. It's just the things that you are doing for yourself that are so good and healthy for you. I'm doing them because I want to do them and I want to be healthy. In the story.
Right, exactly.
In the story. And the last question I always ask people is, if you knew what to do to be healthy, would you do it? And that always makes people think. People kind of look to the side and look down, or look wherever they have to go, search in their head for that answer. And they say, and then sometimes they say, not right now, and go, well, this isn't a good time for us to move forward then. Then it's because I want people who are invested in an outcome, and as soon as possible, in the shortest time as possible, and people who want to learn better ways of doing things so that they have better results that are recordable and that you can have tangible results.
Now, you mentioned in your bio that we have a tendency to ask doctors the wrong questions. Can you give me an example of a wrong question that we ask?
Yeah, you ask people go in and they have a tendency to ask their doctor, what's wrong with me? They come in and they will say, that's just an example, so they'll go to their medical doctor and they say, I don't feel good. So the medical doctor doesn't go through the line of questioning that I do, generally speaking. Some of them do, who are functional medicine doctors. They're much more thorough, or people who practice lifestyle medicine, they're much more thorough. But a lot of doctors, their MO is, let's go do a bunch of tests, and if you're tests come back and they're within the normal range, then they say, you're perfectly fine. It's all in your head. Now, I had especially women patients that have a special interest in women's health, that they were told that, and they telling me like, I still don't feel good, Dr. Pat. I don't know what it is. And I always sent them up to my OBGYN in Boston when I had my active practice on the Cape. And there's a couple instances that, somebody missed, they missed something, and this person had, cervical cancer, or they had other issues that were, preventable. And if they would have stayed there and festered, they would have been in bigger trouble. So that line of questioning that, if you ask the wrong question, or like, my stomach doesn't feel good, or have like some bloating, and the doctor will say, well, what's your age? That just makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And they will tell them that, on that scenario, they're like, oh, it's probably just like, when you get older, you have these issues with digestion, and you have aches and pains in your joints. I know so many people, when I lived on Cape Cod, that had Lyme's disease. Their doctor kept on telling them it was arthritis.
What?
And then I'm going, you've got to go get tested. I go, they didn't order a test. You should go get tested. If call your medical doctor back, tell them, and this is before that, they had this is years ago, but I was like, you need to get a Lyme's test. You need to know whether or not you've got Lyme's or not, and sometimes people were, they were sitting there with it for a while. And it's just like, if I didn't have the improvement I was looking at in a short period of time, I would look at other testing how I practice what I did as a chiropractor at the time. So it's, people, if the question to ask the doctor, this is why I think my book, again, is a good advocating tool, is because it's a really in-depth questionnaire about all your organ systems in your body. There's 11 of them, so, and each section might have, like the gut has 4 sections to that one chapter. So there's, you've got to have, like if you go in saying like, like I'm not feeling good, and here's an in-depth questionnaire on organ systems that I've got some issues over here. I want to order some blood work, or what kind of test can I do to support that? And if you don't get the answer that makes sense in somebody's in your English, then you can always call me. So, I'm more than happy to like steer you in the right direction so that you get the answers that you need in a timely basis, so you're not doctor hopping.
Right.
And people are so, there's so many that they go, like they want to go to a specialist. Well, going to a really good general practitioner, who has an idea of what's going on, the right side's connected to their left side, and looking at how your health is patterning out is valuable, so that when you deal with that problem first by getting on the cart with the horse attached, and you start moving forward. And then if the horse, you got 2 horses and one wants to go one way and one wants to go the other way, then you kind of go, okay, so what else is going on here? Because 2 heads are better than one, and you come back and you go like, okay, so let's repeat the questionnaire. Like, what's coming up right now? So that, because a lot of times, like even like in this COVID thing that's going on and around, when people, who seemingly look like they're healthy, and I use the word look particularly because people go like, well, that person was just fine, and they ended up getting such a bad case of it. Some people succumbed, some people had to fight for their life for weeks, is because they had this inflammation and this, what they call a cytokine storm, happen in their body. And so, it's just like all of a sudden, whatever was lurking below the surface, it erupted. It didn't emerge, it erupted. And so then they're in a huge health crisis. So it's really important to always be looking at your immune system and always be looking at how those organ systems are working with each other, and where you have a weak link, and fix that weak link.
Yes.
Or manage it. Because some things, if you're looking at like how your gene pool or how your epigenetics is playing out, then you've got to take a look at like, well, what is the best thing I can do right now to get this from point A to point like Z? And then, and some logical progression. If it doesn't make sense to you, find somebody else. That's my, because you should, your health should be explained to you in a language that you can understand.
Yes. The doctor I had before, the one I have now, she got to the point where she really just didn't even care. I would tell her that I was having a pain and she'll just be like, probably just have chronic pain. It'll just keep coming back. Do some stretches, you'll be fine. When I moved to the city I'm in now and I got a new doctor and I was telling him about, my issues, and he just went so deep with my medical history and with just everything. That's how I found out I had irritable bowel syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was like, it's all connected. I was like,
it's all connected. And
oh,
it's like how much can you reverse irritable bowel? Some people 100%, so it's just like, and so like, when you're having inflammation, like when somebody hurts their back, for instance, and they're going, God, the other day I had so much pain. I had a patient years ago who told me this. I was working on him and we got to a really nice point. It was the summertime and his plum tree came where he was collecting plums. They were ready to eat. So the first thing you do when you pull fruit off a tree that you're growing in your backyard is you eat way too much of it. All that fructose made him have more inflammation, which flared up his low back problem. So it's like, I always tell people, pay attention to what you're putting in your mouth, and see, like if you're feeling pain the next 2 days, then something that you ate created more of an inflammatory process in your body. And you can eat foods that you are reactive to and not even know you're having a reaction to them. You might get symptoms like 2 weeks later, and you don't realize that those symptoms are related to, like, the pizza that you ate on Friday night, when you're out and you're going, oh, I haven't had this in a long time. And then you're feeling like, a little bit lethargic the next day. And a couple of weeks later, you're going like, God, I have a yeast infection. How'd that happen?
Right. Because I was like, it didn't make sense. I said, you mean to tell me my gut is making my stomach and my back hurt? He's like, yes.
You're
like, okay.
He's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It can, but you have to, like, it's like always the question is like, well, where is my root problem?
Yes.
And it's just like, and you've got a test you can't guess. So this is a really great first test, my book, to find out what's your baseline, what's going on, what test would I order from that, and so I'm doing things that make sense as opposed to just like, I think that we should do, CBC or whatever the test is, to see, like, it gives you a much more funneled view of where to focus.
Right.
It's cool.
What two things can we change in our lives that will help us with our mental and physical health?
Well, let's go talk about one thing first.
Okay.
There's three things that make you sick.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing is what, I would say is trauma. And the first traumas that happen to people are usually when they're born. 9 out of 10 people have some type of cervical damage from the normal birthing process. That's a huge number. And so that sets up the spine to not be correctly aligned, which is why I would tell people to go see a biomechanical specialist, such as a chiropractor, to create that, to check that alignment out. And so when you get that working, you've got to take a look at the second reason. And the second reason why people get sick are because of toxins. So it's the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the food that you eat, it's the chemicals that are in your cleaning fluids. Like if you're using, 409 or whatever, there's other products out there that don't have those extra chemicals, because when you breathe them in, like the air freshener things that you plug in a wall,
mm-hmm.
In the dryer sheets,
mm-hmm.
It's just like, so, those toxins make a difference, like when you're looking at, people in the Midwest, the word pop, for soda, they usually have a minimum of 22 teaspoons of sugar. So if you ever looked at what 22 teaspoons of sugar look like, you would never drink it. And people, when they drink juice, they pour 8-ounce glass of juice. Well, it takes about 3 or 4 oranges to get that 3 or 4 glasses, for that juice amount, depending upon the size of the orange. And from that, then you've got to have this process of like the glucose goes to get handled in the stomach, and the fructose goes to the liver. Liver already is burdened. Who eats 4 or 5 oranges at a time? And so when you're looking at juice, you got to go like, well, how much really is the juice of one orange? If you're going to eat quite something like that, it's usually a third of a cup, by the way. So you have like those kind of toxins that you're with. And the other types of traumas too, besides birth, are like car accidents, slips and falls, tripping and catching yourself sometimes is worse than the actual fall. And then, the last thing is thoughts. Because your thoughts, if people don't have a handle on their thoughts, which people are really having a hard time in these day and times with, and that those thoughts can undo any good that you've done and getting rid of toxins and getting rid of traumas and the inflammation from that, because they sit there and fester, women especially, over men. You ask the man, how's your health? And they go, fine. Unless they're throwing up and then, putting their head in the toilet, they don't consider themselves sick. Women, on the other hand, going like, oh my God, I feel that. I have had menstrual cramps. If you have menstrual cramps, you're going, I don't feel good.
Right.
It's like the question is not so much what the diagnosis is, but the question is like, why? What is it in my environment? And what am I doing, eating, and my lifestyle that's contributing to that problem in the first place? And then you got to change that. That's where your health journey starts. But that's where the third thing comes in, is the thoughts. And that could be, from overthinking, that could be worry, that could be, like you're like not getting, enough, sleep, and like ruminating in your thoughts that are keeping you up. Or, and I always tell people when they have that issue, just get up and write down what the thought is. Like, oh, I need to make this call first thing in the morning. Just write the name on a piece of paper next to your bed and go to sleep. And ask yourself, is there something that I can do about it right now? If you can't do something about it right now, just stop doing it. Move on, and then have an agreement with you, like your head, but you've got to get a handle on thoughts. So those are the three things that make you sick. The two things that I would tell people to do, one of the biggest things as a physician and because I have a specialty, I had a specialty when I had my practice in sports medicine, people are not hydrated enough. They don't flush their systems out enough. They're not hydrated enough. And they should have water that's filtered water and not from the tap. The tap water has a neurotoxin in it. It has fluorine, chlorine, it has stuff in it that is just not good for you. So hydration is a big thing. And they can put lemon in that water because it will help them digest their foods better. And enough just so it's slightly cloudy. And, the second thing I would tell people is to for exercise portion of that is, if you hate to exercise, just go out and walk as fast as you can, as far as you can, for as long as you can. So that, and while you're doing that, think good thoughts. Yes. Think thoughts of gratitude. What am I, grateful for today? It's just like, I'm having such fun with you. I'm going to be grateful for you all this rest next week and ever. I'm having a lot of fun with you doing this. So, I think for an exercise, hack, it's just like, go out and walk, get some good shoes that feel comfortable on your feet. And if you can't walk that far because you're overweight or you have a restriction or you're recovering from something, it's like, just remember, whatever way you walk one way, you got to walk the other way. So just make it a shorter walk, and keep on building up. Make it a goal to to take better care of yourself, especially for self-care, because there's a lot of things you can do for self-care that are out there that are not toxic for you. And if I can just add one third thing that's important. And the third thing I would tell people is read ingredient labels, because anything that you put on your skin, 65% of what you put on your skin gets absorbed into your body. So if you're putting on sunscreen that has parabens in it or phthalates in it, then you are absorbing those parabens or these petroleum-based things, that whatever is the ingredient that you're trying to get in, they're driving in because of this petroleum-based thing that drives that one ingredient into your body. So it's important to know what those ingredients are. Look them up on the internet. Look up what the side effects are, and your vitamins. Look at what the ingredients are in your food, and the fourth one would be probably is to cook as simple as possible. If you can't pronounce something that's on a label, don't buy it if it's for food. And try to make your foods as simple as possible, like 5 ingredients, things like that. There's cookbooks out there to do that make, cooking a lot of fun. and that. So those are more than two, I know, but
Oh
I
no,
thought
those were great.
those are really important ones.
You just blew my mind. I've always looked at labels as far as food was concerned, but never with lotions or body washes or oh, I feel so violated and I got to read all these ingredients.
Well, when you do, you start going like, oh my God, you like look at your, stuff. I had a woman who couldn't get pregnant in my office forever.
Mhm.
And so one day I just said to her, I didn't know what else to do. We changed her diet, we changed her exercise. She was like really good at like visualizing having a baby and all this other stuff. And we
Mhm.
feng shuied her house and,
Mhm.
got everything from underneath the bed, got it out. And then one day I just looked at her and something told me to ask her, what kind of perfume do you use? And she said, well, she told me a name. I don't remember it now, didn't remember it then. I said, go find out what the base ingredients are in that. And
Mhm.
one of the base ingredients in that product was juniper. She used it for 10 years on her body. And so juniper is an imologue, and imologues prevent pregnancy.
No.
And so when we took, and this is a true, honest God's truth story. And that 3 months after she stopped using that, she goes, "Oh my God!" She goes, "I love this." I said, "Well, that's kind of a clue," but yeah,
Wow.
she got pregnant, and my girl was like, "If you get pregnant, you cannot name your child after me." So, but she was just so elated. She just could, she said, "I never would have put that together."
Wow. Well, everyone's talking about apple cider vinegar. Are you an advocate for that? Because I will put apple cider vinegar and lemon juice in my water. Because I'm gonna be honest, I hate water. I force myself to drink it, so I drink it easier. So, are you okay with that? I mean, is that a good thing to do?
It's a great thing to do. It
Okay.
raises the right kind of acid in your stomach. It helps your gallbladder work if you had one. And it helps your liver work because now your liver is doing the job of the gallbladder. So the
Right.
job of the gallbladder is to coat the stomach so you don't have any problems with it. So you don't have too much acid, but
Hmm.
you're having the right kind of acid and stuff. Apple cider is really wonderful. I gargle with it if I've been in a public place. I mean, it's kind of sound funny, but if, in this day and time, if I come back, if I feel like at the end of the day before I go to bed, I'll just take a capful of it and just gargle a little bit and wash my mouth out with it.
Makes sense.
And
Makes
then it helps.
plenty of
It's like if
sense.
there's anything that's not, and I used to tell patients to gargle when they started to get laryngitis with apple cider. And if you like hold your hand up and you look at the main knuckle of your baby finger, I
Hmm.
would tell people put at least that much cider vinegar into a kind of like a rock glass that you would have like a water glass that would hold like at
Hmm.
least 12 ounces, like 8 ounces, and put three fingers, put one finger, the baby finger of cider vinegar, the three fingers of water, and gargle with that.
That is
Because it's
some great advice.
yeah, it's just it's an easy hack that just it's like I give cider vinegar to my dog in his water
Do you
for
really?
the same thing. It helps
Wow.
his kidneys, it helps his liver, it helps his whole intestinal tract.
Hmm.
It's a good thing for you. It's like it cleans, it does so many things. Like you can clean walls with it. There's just so many like uses for cider vinegar. It acts as a water softener for like if you're looking at like your laundry. I use sometimes like a half a cup or like where it says softener, I put the cider vinegar in that part of the washer.
Hmm.
And I use those ceramic balls, to wash my clothes.
Yeah.
It's just like when I tried it, I thought this can't work, and it works pretty well on, most things. But if something's soiled, like I spilled ketchup on something, then I
Hmm.
have to pre-treat it before I use it.
Now, as far as water goes, do you prefer? I know you said tap water is out, which I don't drink tap water anyway. But do you prefer spring water, distilled water, or
I like to have electrolytes in my water, so I go for filtered water.
filtered water?
You
Okay.
know, in some instances, you might want to do, distilled water, but that's not in a lot of cases. But, generally speaking, unless something specifically calls for, drinking distilled water, like they use distilled water in um, like iron so you don't create any rust in them
Hmm.
because some places have higher mineral content in the water. You know, and people who like have water softener systems in their house have got to be careful with, you know, because a lot of them are treated with potassium or sodium something, you know, and having that, you know, if you're looking at like, oh, I can't lose weight, you know, then that might, and if you have a water treating system, you know, I would have the water tested to see what, you know, what those numbers are and to figure that out.
Okay. And what advice would you give someone who's feeling just so unbalanced?
Call me. Buy my book and call me, because you got it. Like when someone's unbalanced, you know, they've got to know where to start, right? And so if you're in the state of confusion, people who are in confused states don't buy. When you go shopping for clothes, and you just don't feel like it, you never buy anything. It's kind of that same kind of like a confused buyer doesn't buy. You know, and so like when you're confused about your health, you've got to really have somebody who can make sense of what's going on, who's able to like kind of like read in between the lines, you know, so like what's really going on, you know, and how long has this been going on, you know, and know what questions to ask that are the right questions. So it's a win-win situation for somebody. So my recommendation for somebody who's doing that, buy the book, see where your score is at, be very honest with yourself, you know, and look at what the question's asking you. Don't think too much about it. just look at the question. And you say like, oh, I don't understand what this question's asking me. Just say, so what is the question asking me? Oh, it's asking me, do I have pain in my side when I eat fat food? You know, and just like, sometimes, okay, then how does that relate to what I have to answer? You know, so and they're all like, you know, circle this or check off that kind of thing. But you've got to know where to start. So when I'm at that, like, I just feeling like, I will go back to I take my own quiz, my own questionnaire. Really? Oh yeah. And, you know, cause I want to know what's going on with me because I want to have, you know, I've been doing it for years, you know, and I've been doing, liver cleanses that tonify the liver to function, you know, for years, like 20 something years. And since 1996. Wow. So how many years is that? And, you know, and I do them regularly so that, you know, I can keep my body working as optimal as possible. So if something does come up, I'm not dealing with a really complicated, convoluted, challenging problem. Right. You know, and having it, you know, and having it make sense to me. And, so that's what I would tell. That's what I would tell somebody. It's like, you should call me. Let's have a talk. Let's get acquainted. Let's see what's going on. And let's see what your next best step is. It might not be me, but if it's not me, then, you know, I will help people figure out where to advocate for that.
Okay. And how can they contact you?
Well, they can contact me in a couple ways. My website is called healthteamnetwork.com. And on my page there, you've been to my webpage, there's a place where you can reach out to talk to me in a strategy session, you know, which takes you to my calendar, and you can schedule time in via that way. Okay.
I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, it's so much fun. We laughed. You know, the only thing we probably didn't do is we didn't get sad and we didn't cry.
I know, and that's a good thing. It's a great thing.
That's a good thing, you know, but you always have, you know, tears of joy also.
Right, exactly. Right? What was you going to say?
I was just going to say, and probably the fifth thing when you add me for the first two, the last thing I would add into that is keep your sense of humor.
Amen.
It's like
300 times to that. Amen.
Find something that makes you happy, you know, and do it. It's just like, if it's like walking, if it's like, you know, if it's baking and like, you know, and you're trying to lose weight, for instance, bake and give it away.
Ooh, that's a good one. A tough one, but a good one.
Hey, bake and give it away, you know, because just think about the, you know, like the gift of being able to give something to somebody else that doesn't have those issues. I mean, right. You And
Wow.
I'm not a baker, so that's never an issue with me, because anytime I've opened flour up in a house, it's for some reason it gets in my bedroom, and it don't even go in my bedroom. It's just like, it's just not my forte.
So
Yes.
I have one last question for you. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm ready for you.
All right. If you could have any song be your theme song when you walked into a room, what would it be and why?
Wow, because I like your music. 'Cause I've listened to a couple of your uh, it's just like, I always like Motown.
Okay.
Um, so like, I'm from Motown, so if I always like Motown songs that are like up and lively. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the songs that I really like is by Lionel Richie. Dancing on the Ceiling.
Yes.
And I
Mm-hmm.
like it because it's so energetic.
Yeah.
And it makes you want to move. One of the things I tell people, honey, if you don't move, you're going to die. That's a great song to get up and dance to.
Mm-hmm.
When I listen to a couple of your podcasts, I'm going, I love that. That girl loves music. I like her podcast. That was, because I'm definitely, I have, I use music for therapy, with people, but that's like one of those songs that if I need to get somebody up and moving, I always request that song. And then I have people just get up and dance.
Awesome. This was fun. This was really fun.
Oh, thanks a million. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. I loved it. So on a 1 to 10, it was like a 30.
Hey.
A great way to do my afternoon. All right. Thanks, Sweetness. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Pat, for all of your information about our mental and our physical health, things that we need to take care of more so now than ever. And if you would like to be on Worldly Church Girl, click the link below, shoot me an email, and let's see what we can do with that thing. Subscribe. Y'all need to subscribe to this podcast because you do not want to miss another episode. Trust. And as always, thanks for joining your one and only Worldly Church Girl.